It's not the end. Maybe you've been told a lie and you don't know how to get out of that. Stay tuned. Welcome to God Answers Prayer. I'm Linda Tiano, your host today, and we are so happy to have you join us. I have a couple of scriptures that I'd like to share with you today. 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, "Now if anyone is enfolded into Messiah, he has become an entirely new person. All that is related to the old order has vanished. Behold, everything is fresh and new." And the second scripture is from Micah chapter 7, verse 18. "Who is merciful, God, like you? Your grace wipes the slate clean of guilt and pardons the rebellion of the remnant of your people. You don't hold your anger against us forever, but you delight in showing faithful, tender love." Our guest today can attest to the veracity of these statements. Victoria Robison is here with us today to share her story and how a ministry and a book was born. We'll be right back after this. Well, Victoria is a former pregnancy center CEO and founded Reassemble to provide after-abortion education and recovery. She has authored 2 books, They Lied to Us, and another book called They Lied to Us Too. Victoria, welcome to God Answers Prayer. It's good to have you with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Your story is so interesting. Just tell us about yourself and your journey.
Okay. It started, my goodness, many decades ago, several decades ago. I became a single mother with 2 little girls after my first marriage ended when my husband decided he didn't want to be married anymore. And they were 9 months and 3 when he left.
Wow.
And he went as far away from us as he could get, from North Carolina to California. And here I was, a woman who had not been working a job full-time, but just very part-time, who now had to make ends meet herself with her children because there was no support coming from him, not just financially, but emotionally and in every way. So it was a rough time in my life. So at one of my 2 jobs, as I dropped my girls off again with babysitters, as I had to do 7 days a week, which was really difficult, I met someone, and that was probably one of the most vulnerable times of my life anyway. My self-esteem was shot. I never expected to be divorced. My parents were divorced. I'd made a vow as a little girl and a teenager that once I was married, especially once I had children, that was it for life. Divorce couldn't even become part of my vocabulary. But what I didn't take into account was it takes 2. And so here I was, devastated and feeling all the things that a woman goes through, especially when she's a single mother without help. And everything, this guy that I met at one of my second jobs, I fell in love. I fell madly in love with him. And he did too. We were very happy. And he was very good to my girls. And we talked about getting married one day. And about 9 months into our relationship, I found out I was pregnant. So here we are, I'm a single mother, I'm still living on my own, struggling with 2 little girls. I've met this guy that I really care about, he cares about me, but we're not married yet. And when I told him that I was pregnant, I thought he would say, I guess we're gonna get married sooner. But he didn't. He started talking to me about abortion. And he just said, we're not ready, you can barely take care of the children you have. So I think we need to, you know what you need to do, and you need to go ahead and go through with it. You're really early anyway, let's get it taken care of. We'll have children later once we get married. then we'll have our own children. So I called the abortion clinic in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I spoke with the woman there. Her first name was Helena, and she said, you'd be really selfish as a mother to bring another mouth to feed when you can barely take care of the two you have. And you sound like a good mother. And good mothers don't do that to their children. You need to give them the best, and you're not going to be able to do that if you're, how many more jobs can you work? And all of the things she said made sense.
Sure.
They made sense. And it's easy to manipulate women like I was.
When you're vulnerable,
Exactly, in the most vulnerable time of their life, and saying what she needs to hear to make it seem, okay, I can breathe. She's telling me that's the right thing. My boyfriend's telling me, and I know he loves me, so this has to be the right thing. And of course, she reminded me, you're only 6 weeks pregnant. It's not really a baby anyway. It's nothing more than a blob of tissue, nothing more than a clump of cells. Isn't it interesting, because we all start out as a clump of cells? But as I said, we are lied to and manipulated at the most vulnerable time by a multi-billion-dollar industry, the abortion industry. So I believed her. So on a Saturday morning, I hired a babysitter to take care of my 2 little girls. And I said goodbye to them, kissed them, told the sitter, I'm going shopping at the mall. There's a big sale. I'll be back in a few hours. And left. And I can remember them still vividly laying on the floor coloring in their coloring books, because at this time now my daughter's 18 months old and my other daughter's almost 4, saying, bye mommy, we'll see you when you, as they loved the babysitter. So they were excited about spending time with the babysitter. And the drive to the abortion clinic was about, from my apartment, 25 minutes. And yet that whole time I'm talking to a clump of cells with my hand on my stomach saying, please forgive me for what I'm about to do, but this is the best choice. My life is such a mess. I've made some really bad decisions. I can barely take care of your sisters, and you don't want to be brought into this mess of my life. It's too chaotic, but please forgive me for this, but this is the best for you. This is what the woman said. This is what your father believes, and they're probably right, but please forgive me for what I'm about to do.
But the father didn't go with you.
He did not. You know what? He couldn't. He had this work thing he had to do, so I had to drive myself. He was out of town. He skipped town, didn't even have to deal with it. So when I got there, there was no one outside. There were no pregnancy centers there that saying, we can help you. There was nobody. There was just a woman after a woman walking in this big, tall, white building in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I found out much later that Saturday were their kill days. That's what they called them, where every Saturday is when they performed abortions. So every woman in that lobby that was sitting there not looking at each other and waiting, looking at their nails or flipping through magazines, wouldn't look up because of the shame and the guilt, including me. We were all there for the same thing. So I was called back, and the woman, Helena, the same woman, I met her in person. She brought me into her office. I used a fake name on the phone and also there in person, which should have been a clue. If I didn't want to give her my name, why was I trying to hide something I'm proud of doing? Which I wasn't, but all these little clues should have told me, get out, you're doing the wrong thing. And Helena sat across from me on her desk, and she said, oh, honey, you're making the right choice, because I was crying. And I was asking her to talk me out of it, basically, saying, you know, I have 2 children. I know the outcome of a pregnancy. I don't know. I'm on the fence here. I'm starting to think I'm making a bad choice, and maybe this is the wrong thing for me. And she grabbed my hand and said, honey, remember what I told you on the phone? You'd be so selfish to bring another mouth to feed. You can barely take care of those 2. You look and sound like such a good mother to your girls. Don't do that to your girls. You don't want to do that to your girls. And you know what? Our government would not allow it to be legal if it could harm you in any way. And you can go out tonight and do whatever you want. It's only going to take about 15, 20 minutes. You'll be fine. When you leave here, never think of it again. I handed her the cash. She slammed it in her drawer, leaned in. Her whole countenance changed. And she said, oh, just so you know, if you change your mind when you're on that table, we don't give refunds here. So don't ask me for your money back.
Wow. There went compassion.
She changed into a totally different person once she got what she wanted and needed, which was her quota. the cash, because it is a multi-billion-dollar business. Has nothing to do with women's rights, women's health, or being pro-woman. It has nothing to do with that. That's just the narrative that they play. But the truth is, it's a multi-billion-dollar business. And once she had my money, she showed me clearly what I truly was. But I was still so rocked with guilt about how could I let this happen? How did I get pregnant? I'm not married. This is wrong. What are people going to think when they already know I'm struggling? All of the things going through my head. And instead of thinking about my baby, I thought about myself and the society and my mother and people in my family, everything but my baby. So they brought me in the room, and the doctor walked in. It's the only time I saw him was when he walked in and walked out. He's about, I don't know, he's probably 5 feet tall, if that, all gray hair, walked in, barely spoke to me, told me to scoot down. And the whole time I'm looking up at the ceiling and tears are flowing, and I'm saying inside my head, tell them you changed your mind, get out of here. How did you get here? Get off this table and leave. And the nurse kept rubbing my arm saying, it's going to be over in a minute. You're fine. It's not even going to hurt. So after it was over, the doctor was just never said a word, was about to walk out. I yelled after him and said, can you please tell me, through tears, was it a girl or a boy? And he threw his arms up and said, I don't have time for this. You were too early. And he walked out.
And there you go.
And there you go, into a recovery room that I lasted 5 minutes. They wanted me to stay 30 to make sure there wasn't a high fever or they left anything, or I lasted 5 minutes. I had to get out of there. And I'll say this to tie that up. The woman I was who walked in to that abortion facility was not the same one who walked out, not even an hour and a half later.
Well, I mean, this sounds pretty harsh, but you encountered a demon.
I did. Several of them. From the phone call, even my boyfriend was being used, didn't even know it. But from that phone call from Helena, I mean, when you think about it, how can people work at a place where they slaughter and murder the most innocent and not be walking with the demonic? There's just no way. There's no way. And so, yes, I did. I encountered several of them that day.
So you go back home, and you have to act like nothing happened.
Yeah.
And hide all of these feelings.
I did. I buried them.
How did you deal with that through the years?
I just buried them. I buried them deeper and deeper. I got involved in relationships that were abusive. That boyfriend and I, we broke up because 9 out of 10 times when a couple chooses abortion, they don't stay together. These girls are having abortions thinking this is the best for our relationship, or he's saying, do it or I'm leaving, and he leaves anyway, because it's a reminder of what you did and the trauma you both decided to go through. And I never looked at him the same. He should have protected me, and he didn't. He never looked at me the same either, because he probably deep down thought, I can't believe she actually did it. So it destroyed our relationship. And a once very loving relationship changed completely after we decided to end the life of our baby.
So down the road, and two more kids.
Yes.
Did you remarried?
I did remarry. I remarried when my girls were 6 and 3, or 7 and 4. I remarried, and not a bad man, but someone I probably married out of my trauma and my pain. And we had 2 children together. My youngest 2, so I have now 4 daughters. And that marriage lasted for almost 20 years. And it ended about, oh gosh, it's been 20 years, almost 20 years ago now. So you make decisions out of where you come from. When you don't deal with your pain and your trauma and things that you bury, as I did for 10 years before I got help, it's going to come out in other ways, which is why I always tell women and men, because men are hurting too, that if you don't deal with this, it's going to come out in how you parent. It's going to come into your relationships with your spouse, your significant other, or your family members. You have to deal with what you did, because that's the only road to healing. It's the only path to healing.
And unfortunately, women tend to think that it's just their problem a lot of times, and it's not the father's problem.
Right.
I mean, men can be complicit in
For sure.
pushing it, but then there are a lot of men that don't want that to happen.
There are, and they beg them not for it to
Right,
happen.
right.
Or they didn't even know she was pregnant, so they're
Yeah.
hurting too. But either way, or they support her even though they don't want her to do it because they think her body, her choice, so I don't have any say.
Yeah.
Because we've emasculated men in this country to believe they don't have a say. And I say to men, but it's not her body. It's not her body. That's
right.
her. That's her child and your child's body. So you need to step up. So we need more men to step up. I had an interviewer ask me once, "Do you think if abortion was illegal, you wouldn't have had an abortion?" And I looked at him and said, "First of all, I don't even try to speed, so I won't get a speeding ticket because I don't want to get in trouble with the law. But second of all, you're asking the wrong question. Why don't you ask me if my boyfriend had been a man and stood up to his responsibility and said to me, whatever it takes, I'll support you." Let's start there. So we need more men to stand up. But of course, if I want to see abortion illegal in this country
yeah.
in my lifetime, absolutely it should be. Would it absolutely diminish abortions? I think I know that it would. But I wanted him to understand it's not just about making abortion illegal.
Right.
We need men to also start standing up and
Yes.
fighting for their children.
Wow. You know, if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're struggling with this very issue, you are not alone. There are people that you can reach out to, and there are people here, prayer partners, that will pray with you and talk to you about what does God think about all of this, and help you make a decision that can change the rest of your life for good. Call us. The number's right there on the bottom of the screen. We'll be right back with Victoria. So Victoria, after hearing your story, I mean, you have come to a place, and you were head of a pregnancy center, right, for a number of years.
Yes.
So you've seen it all, and you've been able. The numbers of babies that have been saved have probably been something that have really carried you
Yes.
through the times.
Yeah, they have. You know, for 10 years after my abortion, I dealt with all the grief and the shame and guilt, didn't tell anyone. And then I ran into the pregnancy center director in Concord, North Carolina, and she kept inviting me to come volunteer. And I kept putting her off for 3 years because I knew what they did at a pregnancy center, which have my heart forever. And she just said, "You'd be so good with the youth." But I found out later that she just knew in her heart that I'd had an abortion. And she was not trying to guilt me into volunteering. She knew that they could offer me abortion recovery that would help me. And so finally, when I gave in after 3 years, and I finally said, "Okay, fine, I'm going to go over here and see, what do they want from me? All right, God, is this my penance?" And I went and I told her, I finally confessed. And when she said, I've known, I've just been waiting for you to tell me. Now let's watch what God's going to do when he takes what the enemy meant to destroy you and turn it into good. He's going to use your voice for the nations, Victoria, and your baby will not have died in vain. And that was 29 years ago.
Wow.
So I attended a retreat for women. It was the first retreat of its kind, a weekend model abortion recovery retreat. It changed my life. Changed my life. After 10 years, at that first night, I said, "How are you going to help me in 3.5 days? I've been begging God for 10 years to forgive me for what I did and to not live under this guilt and this shame and condemnation." And they said, "We're just glad you're here." On Sunday, when it was over, I said to these two women, Carolyn and Trina, "Teach me to do what you just did for me so I can do this for other women." And that was 29 years ago. So I've been doing these weekend model retreats for not only women across the country, for men, because
Yes.
men are hurting too, and for couples who are still together that beat the odds that aborted their own child. And I am watching in real time, in a Thursday to a Sunday, as God transforms them individually and their marriages and their lives and their families, that is going to pay off for generations to come.
Do you find that a lot of women that have been through this process, and maybe they're Christians sitting in the pews.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that.
Yes.
But they want to appear happy, but there's a sadness, a deep sadness that you can, if you pay enough attention, you see it.
They wear masks. They wear masks because they have to. and they're begging for their pastor to say something about abortion. And too many pastors in this country aren't even discussing the sin of abortion,
Right.
which is why Christians are still having abortions, because
Yeah.
we're not talking about it. And then a pastor needs to be talking about that is not the unpardonable sin. God will forgive you. Repent. Ask him forgiveness. He can redeem your life. And these women and men need to know that. But they sit in churches week after week and they're dying inside, waiting for someone to tell them, even your abortion, he will forgive. He died for all sins, including your abortion. And that's why the retreats are so important, because the retreats, by Thursday when they show up, their identity when they show up at my retreats is still, sometimes for decades, I'm talking 5 and 6 decades, their identity is in the abortion. Even if they're a Christian and they've been walking with the Lord for years, they still believe inside, I know God's forgiven me for all my sin except that one.
So it's almost like having your virginity restored.
That's good. Yeah,
mean-
that's true. That's true. That's a great way to put it. So when they come on Thursday night and they're broken and they're there, and I'm looking at them and I'm hearing them say, "No one can ever know, Victoria. Are you going to make me tell people?" I'm like, "No, it's your story to tell." But by Sunday, these women, these men, these couples are saying to me, who just said, "My grown children don't know, my church doesn't know, my pastor, my family. You better not make me tell them." I'm like, "I would never make you tell anyone, and I will always have your confidence." They'll tell me on Sunday, "What can I do to get involved? I want to share my story. People need to hear what the damage that's done,"
Absolutely.
because their identity is no longer in the abortion when they're healed. It's in Jesus, so they don't care.
Yes.
And I'm convinced abortion recovery is the backdoor approach to making abortion unthinkable, because healed people will speak the truth.
So Victoria, you wrote 2 books. Tell us about those.
So They Lied to Us is my first book that I wrote. My full story is in there, along with other women who shared their stories with me in confidence, and I changed their names to protect them. And my second book is They Lied to Us Too, plural, because men started approaching me saying, "Do you only help women?" I have a story too. They whisper it because they're too afraid to say, "I'm hurting too." But men are hurting too. So my second book has stories from men who participated in the abortion of their own child, whether they talked her into it, made her do it, didn't know she was pregnant, or begged her not to. Men are hurting.
Amen. You know, I remember when some of the clinics first began here to help women, and the women were coming, but they wanted to leave the men out. And I was hearing the stories from the men and how, I mean, this is their baby,
It
you
is.
know, and it's like they want it.
They do. And here's the thing. God didn't create us women to kill any of us to kill our
Right.
children. It's not
Right.
natural. For a woman, we nurture, we give life. So that's why the enemy comes against us so hard. But when we realize, "Oh my gosh, I participated in the death of my own child," it's hard. But for men, God made them to protect their women,
That's
to
right.
protect their
Yeah.
children. So it's not natural. When I called the father of my aborted baby, I called him to tell him about my first book, so he'd know I didn't put his name in it. And he started weeping. We hadn't talked in 10 years. And on the phone, he started crying when he heard my voice and said, "Please forgive me for what I made you do. It's haunted me for 8 years. I should have protected you and our child, and I failed you both." And I realized in that moment what you just said. One, first of all, I hadn't fully forgiven him, and I did in that moment. But 2, I felt Holy Spirit speak to my heart and said, "Do not ever forget these fathers.
Yeah,
These
yeah.
children have fathers, and they're hurting."
Yeah.
And from that moment on, I have never spoke at a church, spoke at an event, or done an interview where I don't want to talk about men, because they are the forgotten, and it's not right. They're forgotten
So
fathers.
in the time we have left, how do people get hold of your books?
You can go to reassemblelife.com to get a hold of me. My books are on Amazon. The publisher was sold to Amazon, so they're sold there on Amazon. If you want to get them directly from me because you don't want to shop at Amazon, just message me at my website, reassemblelife.com, and I'll personally send one to you.
Wow. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you for
coming
having
and
me.
sharing. And for those of you, again, if this is bearing witness with you and you have been like Victoria and you wanted to hold it as a secret for all those years, or maybe you're contemplating doing something, please reach out to someone There are plenty of places that you can go that they will embrace you, but we want to embrace you with love and with the scripture to tell you how God feels about it. He loves you, and He has a plan and a purpose for you and for your baby. So today, as we close this time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May He make His face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May He lift up His countenance upon you and give you His everlasting peace. Shalom, shalom.
Thank you for joining us today on God Answers Prayer. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on our program, please contact us by visiting kchftv.org and click on Share Your Testimony. Our prayer partners are here to pray for your needs. Call us today at 505-345-4165. We appreciate your prayers and support. Join us again next time for more inspiring stories and testimonies. Remember, God is always listening, and He answers our prayers in His perfect timing.